It would be an understatement to say that we parted ways. Our 2 children had recently graduated from college and secured employment on the other side of the continent. Beth was teaching in Oklahoma, while Jeff was employed by a software development company in Denver. Our family home was now unoccupied. In response, my wife Bonnie compensated for this by focusing more on her work. She was employed by and I was employed by an advertising firm, and Dredd was also engaged in a new position that entailed additional responsibilities. I was engaged in the sale of cement, which was a period when there was not as much work available, but construction was experiencing a boom, and equipment was in short supply. My company was able to guarantee delivery, which came at a cost. I was fortunate enough to sell almost all of my inventory by the end of spring. I had planned for the year in advance and made more money than ever before, while working less for the remainder of the year. I could then dedicate my time to resolving minor issues. It was crucial to ensure that the goods were delivered in accordance with the contract terms and that we were duly compensated, given that Bonnie was accustomed to working late on a few evenings each week. I agreed to meet with a reputable client to discuss potential business opportunities. I had to arrange a meeting with him at a reputable hotel approximately an hour's drive from my residence. The hotel boasted an excellent reputation and a restaurant offering exquisite cuisine. I arrived half an hour ahead of schedule and observed a Ford Explorer bearing a striking resemblance to Bonnie's. I am aware that approximately 10 million of these vehicles are sold annually, making it not uncommon to encounter the same model. The vehicle was a model, but then I noticed a yellow mark on the left rear tire. I had drawn it myself when I looked for a puncture in the tire and thought I found it. I marked it to show the repairman at the tire shop, but in reality it turned out to be a faulty valve. However, the mark on the tire remained. I was aware that Bonnie could also treat clients to lunch and considered options. If she were to be working with a client, it would likely be preferable for me to refrain from drawing attention to my sales experience. I was aware that the few distracting factors or additions to a commercial offer would be more easily overlooked if I were to maintain a low profile. I proceeded into the dining room and surveyed the scene from behind the door, ensuring that I could see everyone before they noticed me. Bonnie was not present in the room, instead, it was the hostess. I approached and, upon mentioning my name, observed Bonnie and her colleague exiting the elevator, holding hands. I had previously encountered this individual on several occasions and was aware of his approximate age, marital status, and educational background. I appeared to be a devoted admirer, observing his companion in a confined space from the bar. The hostess patted my shoulder and inquired if I would follow her to my table. She inquired if I would accompany her to my table. When the circumstances align correctly, coincidences are endless. They showed me my table, situated in close proximity to where Bonnie and Clyde were seated. Some intricate lattice screens separated the bars and dining areas, allowing eavesdropping on conversations. "Let's hurry up and finish," Romeo said. "I want to ride you one." As the time for our departure drew nearer, I recalled the man's name, Robert James. He resided in the neighboring town and was a man of 2 names. His wife was a petite woman, approximately a decade his junior. Their children were quite young. I had once encountered her at a corporate Christmas celebration. I then recalled that she was not present at the previous Christmas party. That was when he was. At that time, I was merely enjoying myself and not engaging in the act of intellectual speculation, although I should have informed you of my suspicions. "You are so excited." Bonnie laughed and said, "Where are you rushing with all your energy?" "I'm saving it for you. Kathy is always tired. She is quite content with the fact that we have almost no sexual intercourse. In fact, she even seems grateful when I come home late and just go to, 'Does your husband endeavor to satisfy your sexual desires?' he inquired. Brian has not demonstrated any interest in engaging in sexual intimacy with me for several weeks. In fact, since we began coming here together, he has not shown any interest at all. However, I have already received everything I needed from you. I do not want him to discover any traces of you on me or inside me." She laughed for him. "I am too busy and too tired to engage in sexual intercourse with him. His loss is my gain," the man replied with a hint of mirth. "I appreciate that you are saving yourself for me. Let's see how long you can maintain that resolve." "I will not refuse Brian if he persists," Bonnie replied. After all, he is my husband. I will simply deflect him. He is quite attentive and will not pressure me. I can keep him at bay for a while, but it is becoming increasingly challenging. Bonnie, I advise you to reserve your affections for me for as long as possible. When circumstances eventually align in my favor, you will divulge all of your secrets. The disagreeable individual persisted, and Bonnie acquiesced. I will record every detail for you, Bob. I have overheard everything I wished to hear, and even some things I would prefer to forget. I was aware that Bonnie had been preoccupied with numerous commitments recently, but I had not anticipated this extent of infidelity. I had been unaware that my wife was engaging in infidelity. Our lives were intertwined in numerous ways, including financial partnership, parenting of our 2 children, and the role of confidant and advisor. It never occurred to me that her suggestions and advice were less than sincere and did not consider my interests. We had been intimate, at least in my perception. I had much to reconsider, and I was fortunate to have the opportunity to do so. They expeditiously concluded their repast and returned to their domicile before my client's arrival. He was a boisterous individual who would have divulged my presence had Bonnie remained seated behind the lattice. Even after my lunch and negotiations, I was home earlier than Bonnie. I resolved not to inform her of my awareness of her machinations. I needed time to reflect on the situation. I was forced to consider what would be best for me. I realized that for the first time in many years, I had to make quite dramatic decisions without Bonnie's advice. It was evident that I needed to develop a life for myself where there would be no place for her. I needed to gain a deeper understanding of myself and what I needed to become happy. It was almost 10, at 2000 hours, Bonnie returned home. At that time, I was watching television and experiencing a sense of despondency. I questioned the rationale behind remaining at home while she was out socializing. I needed to prioritize my own well-being. Upon greeting me, she kissed me on the cheek. The kiss conveyed a depth of affection that I had not anticipated. I recognized that my inclination towards exclusivity in relationships was strong. Since she had engaged in sexual intercourse with another man, I no longer considered her to be exclusively mine. Additionally, I no longer perceived her to be loyal or dedicated to me. This connection had been severed, and I experienced distress as a result. I was unable to deny that she had informed me about her challenging day and had gone to bed. I sat in front of the television, attempting to determine whether I should seek retribution and, if so, how. I contemplated this until late at night. Eventually, I acknowledged that. I came to recognize that she had been my wife, partner, and lover for a considerable length of time, and that attempting to inflict harm upon her would be futile. She was the mother of our 2 children, and had provided for their needs. It was imperative for me to prioritize my own well-being, as I had become accustomed to subordinating my own needs to those of my family over the course of many years. Now, more than ever, it was crucial for me to focus on my own self-care and take steps to improve my circumstances. I had to consider whether my life should be focused on her, or whether her place in my life would be a waste of my efforts and time. I decided that my happy life would be a better reward. That night, I slept very little. The next day, I woke up early and left the house before Bonnie got out of bed. I was unable to bear to see or hear her. However, I still had to consider where I should go. I was unaware of the opening hours of many establishments. At 0 hours, I observed a number of vehicles in a parking lot on a particular street. It was not a discount store. I consulted the sign above the door and ascertained that it was a gym. I then proceeded to enter the premises. The attendant informed me that the gym was open from 5 o'clock until 11 o'clock. At night, I considered this an opportunity to avoid Bonnie. I signed up and began attending the gym regularly. I felt somewhat better than when I had seen Bonnie with her partner. I began my personal journey to the next stage of my life during lunch. I overheard a few men discussing their golf game. I decided to join in. Prior to my marriage, I had aspired to play golf, but the demands of raising children ultimately consumed my free time and energy. Despite having not played in over 2 decades, I joined the conversation and was invited to play with them on Saturday. I left the office early and purchased golf clubs, having heard that tailor-made clubs are of superior quality. I spent nearly $11 on a set of clubs. I invested a significant sum of money, amounting to $1,000, on a comprehensive set of golf clubs, including a bag, shoes, umbrella, balls, shirts, towels, and other essential accessories. It marked the first occasion in many years that I had made such a significant personal investment. I then proceeded to purchase items for my gym routine, motivated by the desire to improve my physical fitness and appearance. I recognized the importance of maintaining a healthy and active lifestyle, particularly given my interest in pursuing romantic engagements. At approximately 8 p.m., I returned home with my purchases. Bonnie inquired as to whether I had been there. I informed her that I had taken up golf again and that I was not home when she returned from work. I explained that I typically do not come home this early, so I thought I could be a little late on occasion. I assured her that I was not complaining and that it was good that she had somewhere to go. I told her that she deserved it. "It is curious, Bonnie, that you left early this morning. I am merely wondering if anything untoward occurred. What could possibly be the matter? You have a nice home, 2 beautiful children, and a loving, faithful wife. That is what every man hopes for, but few have." I boasted, and Bonnie gave me a quick look, as though she did not see any signs that I suspect her. By the time I had unpacked my purchases, I realized I was fatigued, had poor sleep quality, and woke up early. I was exhausted. I informed Bonnie that I was going to bed and would see her the following day. She was surprised that it was around 9, as I never went to bed before the evening news. She must be pleased. I thought I made it easier for her to keep her secrets, and I fell asleep immediately, not hearing when she went to bed the following morning. I got up at 4, on the 30th, I engaged in a showering and shaving routine, followed by an entry into the gymnasium a few minutes after 5. I proceeded to utilize the available machinery, selecting a few that were designed to target the specific areas of my body that required the most attention. I then proceeded to utilize the treadmill, and was taken aback by the swift onset of fatigue. I commenced my training at an optimal time, and was intrigued by the sheer number of individuals who were engaged in such activities at such an early hour. They were welcoming and helpful, and it became evident that there was a subculture of individuals who shared similar aspirations and provided each other with encouragement and support in their pursuit of these goals. I proceeded to perspire profusely, take another shower, and subsequently proceeded to the office after work. I proceeded to the training field, retrieved a few golf clubs from my bag, and spent an hour hitting golf balls. Initially, my performance was unsatisfactory, but I soon identified a rhythm and began striking the ball with greater proficiency. I recognized that advancements in equipment over the past 2 decades could enhance my performance. I paused at a modest diner, enjoyed a relaxed dinner, and returned home. It was not yet 9 p.m., and I was already in bed. Bonnie was not present, but I assumed she was likely asleep with her partner. This was the last thought I recall before. It was time to rise and proceed to the gymnasium. Bonnie was asleep in close proximity to me, so at some point she must have arrived home after her excursion. On the same day after work, I purchased a membership at a country club. I then proceeded to engage in a round of golf with another individual at the club. It was approximately 8 p.m. when I returned home. Bonnie was displeased. She inquired as to why I had not informed her that I would not be returning home directly after work. "Brian," she demanded, "where are you going so early in the morning? Have you checked the answering machine?" "I left you a message," I informed her. I replied in the manner she had become accustomed to, stating that I would be attending the gym on 5th Street in the morning. I had become too sluggish to engage in further discussion. She then protested that she had felt foolish for not even considering listening to the message. In response, I acknowledged that she was correct, but argued that she should have checked the answering machine, as I had. She then suggested that I should have informed her of my plans to attend the gym. I agreed, but stated that it seemed as though she was already worn out by the end of the day, and would therefore be unlikely to wish to engage in further activity, and go to the gym. "Is this a passive-aggressive way to get me to have sex more often?" Bonnie inquired. "That is not precisely what I meant when I said I am tired by night," I replied. "I am simply attempting to enhance my health and well-being. I am extending an invitation for you to join me," I continued. "I am not attempting to make you feel guilty about the lack of sexual intimacy." "I am a considerate individual," Bonnie interjected. As you are aware, I work diligently and under considerable stress. I am exhausted when I return home. I understand, I replied. I comprehend her perspective. Indeed, I had a fruitful day, and I am less fatigued than I was yesterday. She discreetly smiled, and the notion of engaging in sexual intercourse with her made me feel unwell. I would rather forego sexual intercourse than accept a mere fraction of it. That is admirable. I arose early, exercised, and played golf today. I am utterly exhausted, and I am going to retire for the night. I informed her that Bonnie was taken aback. Throughout our years together, she consistently determined when we would engage in sexual intercourse. I never refused when the proposition was extended, and it was assumed that I would be gratified by the gesture. I departed from the encounter with the woman, leaving her speechless. I sensed that I was finally taking control of my life, and it felt positive. I began playing golf immediately after work, whenever the weather permitted. I considered that Bonnie would appreciate the activity, as it provided her with an opportunity to remain within the confines of her residence in the evenings. I pondered whether Bob would exhaust his supply of sausages as a result of this decision. Over time, my performance improved, and I was able to play better than some of the other men. I attributed some of my success to the gym, as I had been playing consistently for the last 20 years. My ability to walk faster and further, as well as my increased strength in the stomach, chest, and shoulders, enabled me to strike the golf ball with greater precision. Soon after, a woman a couple of years my junior joined the gym. We established a rapport and began working out together on the machines. We provided each other with encouragement and engaged in light-hearted banter, which contributed to an improved and more engaging workout regimen. Her name was Tiffany, and she was a lawyer. At a small firm in a nearby town, she eventually informed me that she had once returned home from work early and discovered her husband engaging in inappropriate behavior with a married neighbor. She subsequently divorced him and relocated to her current residence, situated a few blocks from the gym. Both her children were enrolled in college, prompting her to recognize the need for personal improvement and enhanced health. It required several days for me to muster the courage to divulge my own circumstances. She listened attentively, offering no commentary or opinion, but rather indicating through her body language that she was processing the information. Bonnie began to express her disquiet about my late golf games and early gym sessions. I do not believe that she was particularly troubled by my activities, but she was concerned that I was happy and enjoying life. She wanted to be the sole arbiter of my happiness and felt that she was losing control over me. In the last month, we have only had dinner together on a few occasions. She stated one evening, when I returned home after dark, that unless it was pouring rain, I spent every evening playing golf. She asked me whether I wanted us to have dinner together every the following evening. I proposed that it was not necessary to have a weekly commitment, but rather to plan for one evening per week. I explained that I would still have to work late on a regular basis and that I was willing to take a break from golf on the evening in question. I suggested that we plan for Tuesday evening. I inquired as to whether this would be acceptable. I acknowledged that it was challenging to make a commitment in advance, given the variability in my schedule. I highlighted that I had several important clients with whom I was currently engaged. Dinner together. My time and hobbies are important to me. I am not willing to wait idly for you to find time for me. You play, and I work. Bonnie was insistent that there was a nuance to the situation that I was not recognizing. She seemed to believe that I was so lacking in intelligence that I would feel guilty because she worked so hard. She works with Bob, and I am supposed to feel guilty. It became evident that I was on the right track when I decided to build my life, or I even began to reconsider my stance on vengeance. I informed Bonnie that the next time there was a heavy rainfall and she was not required to work, we would have dinner together. She responded with disdain, stating that she disliked the idea of missing a game of golf. I concurred and inquired if she was seeing someone. She replied that I had been acting in a peculiar manner lately. Bonnie then brought up my recent gym visits and returned to golf after a long absence, which she found suspicious. I maintained my composure. It is illogical to perceive this as suspicious behavior. It is no more peculiar than your sudden need to work on numerous occasions during this period, given the consistency of your previous routine. I have not accused you of engaging in extramarital activities or expressed discontent. Have I? No, Bonnie replied, her cheeks flushed and her voice rising in anger. She abruptly departed from the room the following morning. I was engaged in a brisk walk on the treadmill adjacent to Tiffany when I became aware of another individual in the gym. I had not noticed anyone else there until I heard my name being called. "Brian, who is your friend?" a voice demanded through the din of the machines. I ceased operating the treadmill. Bonnie elected to accompany me, and I greeted her with a broad smile. However, I was overcome with curiosity about this woman's identity. Bonnie, who had also ceased operation of her treadmill, approached us. "Hello," she said, extending her hand to me. I was initially suspicious but uncertain. I was surprised by Tiffany's forthrightness. I had assumed that a woman involved in an affair would not be so friendly. Surely, Bonnie ought to know this. She then took Tiffany's hand and shook it. "Hello, Tiffany," she responded. "I am Bonnie, Brian's wife. We have been married for 25 years. Do you work with Brian?" "No," she replied. "We just work out at the same gym. I am a lawyer. I am unaware of Brian's profession. Are you planning to join the gym?" Tiffany inquired as to whether Bonnie would be interested in joining the gym. Bonnie responded that she had indeed considered the possibility but ultimately decided against it. She expressed her reluctance, stating that she disliked the early morning hours. This response prompted Bonnie to contemplate a potential invasion of Bonnie's new life. Bonnie was uncertain as to how this could be beneficial. I was on the verge of objecting, but I realized that would be a tactical mistake. Bonnie would never get up that early just to keep an eye on me. Her approach was to make me quit. It would be much easier to keep track of me if I were just sleeping in bed. "So," I asked, "why did you get up so early?" "Is something wrong?" she replied. "No," I said. "I just needed to get up early for work today, so I decided to stop by here and see what it was like." Bonnie offered her explanation. I knew that was a lie. She never had to get up. 2 hours earlier, she arose early to visit the gym, ostensibly to monitor my activities. However, her motives were more complex. She had discovered me in the company of an attractive woman, which prompted her to seek out Tiffany. Bonnie would eventually comprehend the situation correctly, although she might have noticed a few more fit and attractive women in the gym. I found it intriguing that Bonnie was so adamantly opposed to me deriving any pleasure from life. Why was she envious of me? After all, she was engaging in sexual intercourse multiple times a week, while denying me the same. Her request was motivated by a desire to avoid the likelihood that I would discover her charms had recently been used. What, then, was her actual objective? I found myself questioning whether she was even aware that I was not engaging in any wrongdoing. I was, in fact, taking steps to improve my life, and I was pleased with the progress I was making. After a few minutes of inconsequential conversation, Bonnie took her leave. I returned to my treadmill, where Tiffany was waiting. She seemed to believe that I was up to something. "It's obvious that you're up to something, Brian," Tiffany stated. "You're checking out the gym, and you're not the only one. There are other women here, too. It is a common phenomenon for individuals to ascribe their own behaviors to others. If they engage in unfaithfulness, they will assume that others are doing the same. Your wife does not trust you, and this is a typical example of such behavior. My husband was also unfaithful, and he assumed that I must be unfaithful as well." I reflected on what Tiffany had said for the remainder of the day. On that day, I left work early to play 18 holes of golf. My performance was not optimal, as I was preoccupied with considerations regarding Bonnie. At some point, I would have to inform her of my awareness of her actions. Divorce appeared to be the sole viable solution, although the prospect was disheartening. I had been in a relationship with Bonnie for 25 years and had raised 2 children together. For 25 years, we had raised 2 wonderful children. It was unfortunate that she felt a need that she could not satisfy with me. However, her affair was unacceptable for any reason, even if she did not care about me. It was with a married man with small children, which was unforgivable. When I returned home that night, I was distressed. Bonnie was in a cheerful mood. I was intrigued by her apparent change in demeanor, as she rarely exhibited such warmth, at least towards me. Soon, she was seated next to me on the couch, sipping wine while I enjoyed a cold beer. She then inquired, Brian, we haven't engaged in sexual intercourse for several months. Don't you miss it? Don't you desire sexual intimacy anymore? I replied in the affirmative. I had anticipated such a question for several weeks. It took her an extended period of time to express her astonishment at my celibacy. Bonnie, I am a pragmatic individual. I have channeled my energy towards pursuits that do not necessitate the approval, involvement, or gratification of others. This approach has afforded me a sense of liberation. You have been sending me a multitude of signals indicating that I no longer require anything from you. I no longer need to engage in sexual intercourse with you, so I have adapted my expectations accordingly. I do not believe that this is a matter that I should ask for, fight for, or pay for. In my opinion, it is not a worthwhile pursuit. Sexual intercourse should be the result of mutual desire between two individuals, preferably married, for their mutual enjoyment. You seem to believe that I am at fault, Brian. Bonnie abruptly interjected. I have been working a great deal recently, and I have noticed that you have not been particularly romantic. You are always playing golf or going to the gym. You have not made any advances towards me for several months. I suspect that this is what bothers you, Bonnie. I have not asked, so you could not deny me. It deprives you of the pleasure of denying me sex when it would appear that Brian is not concerned by this. However, this is not the case. Bonnie stated that she believes a man should be the initiator of sexual intercourse. A woman is stimulated by a male partner. If a woman is not in the right frame of mind, she will not want to engage in sexual intercourse. This should not be a problem if the woman is not ready for sexual intercourse. Until I run a marathon, wash the car, mow the lawn, find a cure for cancer, and lick you all over until I stand on my head. That is simply not a feasible proposition, given that you do not feel the desire to engage in sexual intercourse, and I do not feel the desire to have it. We are both content retirees, are we not, Bonnie? She was genuinely perplexed. She was attempting to incite my desire for sexual intercourse. She did not inform me of her arousal, but rather, she desired that I engage in sexual intercourse with her. She wanted me to be romantic so that I might or might not access a frequently used orifice, which I found unappealing. This game no longer held any allure for me if you do not wish to engage in sexual intercourse with me. Brian, I have to assume you might be having an affair. I'll burn you to the ground if you're having an affair. Keep that in mind. At that moment, I decided to seek revenge. To prove my point, I suggested that we consult with a lawyer and draft a contract stipulating that, in the event of my infidelity, she would be entitled to claim the house and our savings. I reasoned that, given the gravity of my alleged transgression, should be held accountable for my actions. Does that sound like a man who is having an affair? I believe you may be offering this simply to derail my train of thought. Brian, I am aware of your cunning nature. I will accept your offer. She agreed. I replied, I will call the lawyer tomorrow and set up an appointment. I will inform him that we require the documents to be prepared by the time we arrive. Our marriage had reached a point of no return. I was aware that I could no longer ignore Bonnie's infidelity, but I had previously hesitated to take the necessary steps to end it. It took some time, but I was now prepared to take the next step towards reclaiming my life. 3 days later, we arrived at the lawyer's office. Having come straight from I proceeded to the office, where I was greeted by the secretary and subsequently escorted to the lawyer's office. We proceeded with the customary pleasantries and promptly addressed the matter at hand. I was intrigued to observe Bonnie's response to this proposition, which was somewhat unconventional. Certainly, we can do as you wish, the lawyer began. I have a document here which states that each of you will forfeit your right to the other's house, savings, or pension if found to be unfaithful to your marital vows. The agreed-upon spouse essentially receives all the communal property. I observed as the lawyer's words sank in. Bonnie's smile disappeared, and she looked worried. She addressed both of us, inquiring as to why the document would apply if Brian were to cheat. She asked why she was included. I was instructed to draft the document in this manner. Mrs. Myers, did you intend for the responsibility to fall solely on Mr. Myers and not on yourself? He responded affirmatively. I anticipated that Bonnie would respond as she did. I inquired as to why she was reluctant to sign the document. She replied, "What are you doing, Brian. I responded, I really don't see a problem, dear. You wanted something that would protect you if I strayed. It sounded like a good idea, and I thought it would be just as good for both of us. Is there any reason you can't sign this? Is there something wrong? I played my best. The game I had played, even to my own satisfaction, seemed to me to be conducted in a sincere and unsuspecting manner. I was uncertain as to whether she would fall into the trap. I was also unsure as to whether I would be forfeiting my rights. She replied that I was asking her to forfeit her rights, but that she was reluctant to accept the same punishment. I asked why she was so reluctant to sign the document. She was eager for me to sign the document, yet there was something she wanted me to know. She was visibly agitated, and it was evident that she was preoccupied with thoughts that were racing through her mind. It was clear that she was a person who was unfaithful to her spouse, and she truly believed that she would never get caught. She was reluctant to sign the document that I had asked her to sign because she did not want to arouse suspicion. Brian Bonney provided reassurance that I would be satisfied with the signature of a single stroke of the pen. Our associate's fate was effectively sealed at that moment. I proceeded to sign the contract, and our lawyer affixed his signature as a witness and notarized the document. He promised to send us copies and, of course, a bill for his services. We took a brief intermission to procure nourishment, Bonnie, since we were already out. I propose that we have not dined together in a considerable length of time, and it is therefore an opportune moment. Brian, I am obliged to conclude some contracts. Bonnie declined, indicating that she was intending to meet her paramour. This information caused me considerable disquiet. I had lost any doubts or feelings of remorse about the contract that we had just signed. I was watching television when Bonnie she arrived. I had prepared the groundwork and was awaiting her response. I must attend a meeting in Baltimore this weekend. A client has lodged a complaint about the quality of our product, and I must investigate the matter and implement a solution. I informed her that I would leave on Friday morning and return on Sunday afternoon. Is that acceptable? You're providing me with insufficient advance notice, Brian, Bonnie stated. However, if you require an excursion, you should embark on it. I shall merely spend a tranquil weekend at home. I was aware that she was delighted, yet she was also aware that it was unwise to display her feelings. Why not display a degree of emotion, as she is adept at doing, while maintaining the pretense of normalcy on Friday evening? I discreetly opened the door to our bedroom and entered the room. I proceeded to the bedroom and flipped on the light switch. Bonnie's eyes widened in response to the sudden illumination, and she turned to face me. Bob was still engaged in sexual intercourse with her, and they both appeared startled by my abrupt appearance. "Hello, Bonnie. How are you?" I inquired. "Hello," she replied, her voice still somewhat disoriented. "Good evening." "Good evening," I responded. "This is Bob, isn't it?" "Yes," she said, her eyes still fixed on me. I inquired rhetorically as I entered the room, "Those are quite nice breasts you've got in your hands, Bonnie." I then informed her that I had something for her, though I was actually there to serve the divorce papers to her. The constable I had hired to serve the papers approached Bonnie and served her. I believe he spent a bit more time watching Bob's hands gripped Bonnie's breasts. However, this would only be advantageous if he were required to testify in court. He nodded at Bonnie and departed the room. Bonnie, finally recognizing her compromising position, disengaged from Bob and sought refuge under the blanket with him. Attempting to speak, she found herself unable to articulate her thoughts. "To feel left out, Bob," I continued. "Your wife is here and wants to say a few words to you, Mrs. James. You have the floor," I said with a smile, stepping aside so everyone could see this scoundrel's wife standing behind me. "This pathetic scoundrel'll never come home again. My parents were right about you. You are a bastard. I wish I could. Remove your clothing and present it to me. You would be better off sleeping with this aged woman than with your own wife." Bonnie flinched at her words but made no protest. She and Bob merely shrunk under the bedclothes while his wife raged. "You may retain this aged woman, but I am divorcing you and I am determined to do so. Indeed, I will secure a favorable settlement. Mr. Myers was gracious enough to offer his testimony if I require it. I am confident that the constable will also serve as a reliable witness. I assured Mr. Myers that I would refrain from engaging in such behavior. She let out a brief, amused laugh and pressed against the wall. That was my cue to interject. I did so as I extended my hand and grasped Bob's. The subject displays thinning hair. There is a problem. A man is in the house, in the bed, and with the wife. It is not the subject. The man was lifted and dragged into the hallway. He squirmed, but the subject kept his head low and moved, preventing the man from putting up any real resistance. The man was dragged down the stairs. He fell halfway, but I continued my pursuit. He managed to regain his footing and we reached the door. I opened it, pulled him out onto the porch, and kicked him onto the driveway. I then returned to the interior of the residence. I looked up the stairs and observed his wife standing there, smiling through tears in the bedroom. I heard Bonnie finally begin to sob. I escorted Mrs. James to her vehicle and drove her home. I surmised that Bob must have had keys hidden either in his vehicle or in his posterior. Given that his vehicle had departed from my driveway, some might assume that I should have engaged in sexual intercourse with his wife to exact revenge. However, that notion never crossed my mind. She was a woman in distress. I would have been an unscrupulous individual if I had caused her further harm. When I returned home, Bonnie had packed some clothes and was carrying her suitcase down the stairs. I was gratified that she did not attempt to convince me that our sexual relationship was merely physical and that she was in love with me exclusively. This led me to conclude that she did not truly love me and to wonder whether she had ever loved herself. Her actions towards me were cruel and bordering on sadistic. Being humiliated did not arouse me. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and returned to the living room. She regarded me with a combination of anger and sadness. "You knew all along and set me up, didn't you?" she asked. It has always been my contention that those who seek revenge, much like terrorists, cannot truly be effective unless the victim knows who did it to them and why. You have always been clever, Bonnie. Do not let the door hit you on the way out. I nodded at her and opened the cold beer. Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and leave your comments.